This week, I am joined by John Strand and Matt Alderman to talk about the enterprise security news. ThreatConnect is releasing an enhanced integration with Flashpoint. ObserveIT is unveiling a new crowdsourced insider threat analytics solution. Thycotic is launching an automated solution for managing service accounts. And StackRox Kubernetes Security Platform is being offered on the Google Cloud. In our second segment, we air 3 pre-recorded interviews from Black Hat 2019 with Steve Laubenstein of Core Security, Ian McShane from Endgame, and Peter Smith from Edgewise. In our final segment, 2 more pre-recorded interviews from Black Hat because I didn't want too much time to go by before we aired them. Carson Willems of VMray and David Etu of Blue Voyant. Stay tuned for all that and more on this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly. This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly. Cloud-first development helps your business move fast, but misconfigurations and blind spots are part of the deal. App and dev teams get the flexibility, while security teams are left with the stress of managing new risk using legacy workflows. ExtraHop RevealX provides cloud-native network detection and response, backed by cloud-scale machine learning that helps you spot threats and unify processes across hybrid environments. Learn more at extrahop.com/securityweekly. That's extrahop.com/securityweekly. Networks are becoming increasingly complex and fragmented, and digital transformation and DevOps are driving an explosion in network connectivity changes. With each new network connection, cyber attackers may gain another opening to breach or traverse the network. At Tufin, they've pioneered a policy-based approach to network security management using automation and analytics. As a result, you can make network changes in minutes instead of days, reliably and securely. To learn more about Tufin, the security policy company, go to securityweekly.com/Tufin and sign up for a free evaluation. By the end of 2020, 99% of exploited vulnerabilities will be publicly disclosed and known to IT system admins. The consequences of that fact means the burglar will already be in your house because you left the front door wide open by failing to patch known vulnerabilities. How can you keep the threat actors out? Through cloud-based automation, Automox enables you to slam the door on unpatched OS and third-party vulnerabilities across your entire Windows, Mac, and Linux infrastructure. Take advantage of a free trial with Automox to not only see the vulnerability status of your infrastructure, but do something about it within minutes. Start automating the fundamentals of cyber hygiene at securityweekly.com/Automox. That's securityweekly.com/Automox. Well, welcome to episode 150 of Enterprise Security Weekly for August 21st, 2019. I'm your host, Paul Asadorian, joined on the lines remotely by Mr. John Strand. John, welcome.
Hey, good to see you guys. This is one of the first times in a long time that we've all been on the show together
right.
at the same time, which is
wonderful.
Cool.
Mr. Alderman is here as well on the lines remotely. He'll be here in studio next week, which is awesome.
Yes, but I love being the third wheel because that means John's here.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, John, you just have a knack for covering vendors, man, that nobody else can replicate.
I was thinking the same thing. I was like, Matt's here, so I don't have to talk as much.
Yeah. Think about how I feel when both of you are here.
Every week you're not here on the show. It's your turn.
No, which is actually a significant number of the weeks.
When you're both here, I don't really have to say much, which is awesome. Makes my job easy. This show's really easy. We just have the news, and then it's pre-recorded segments because I want everyone to hear what we did at Black Hat because we had a lot of fun and we interviewed a lot of really awesome people from awesome companies. So.
And I got in on 0 of those reindeer games.
It's all right. Everyone's busy doing their own thing at Black Hat. We get that.
And I had some other stuff that I was dealing with.
Absolutely.
But, man, it was cool seeing the text messages coming through the team. You guys showed up to Batista's literally the same time the BHIS team was there. And I've still missed you guys.
We missed each other. It's all right.
Yep.
Next year.
Always.
Exciting news about the webcast program here at Security Weekly. We're partnering with IC Squared as an official CPE provider. If you attended any of our webcasts or would like to attend our webcast, which you should because they're going to be really awesome, you can go to securityweekly.com/webcast. You get 1 CPE credit per webcast. You can register and watch our archives at securityweekly.com/on-demand. Zane Lackey and Doug, what's Doug's last name? Is their implementation engineer, Doug Coburn will also be on. We're actually doing a deployment of Signal Sciences inside of the Security Weekly application we use for publishing and managing our shows. I'm going to run some scans against it and monitor it and talk about the results, which is going to be so much fun. I have a meeting with Doug tomorrow to do that, so I'm excited. Stephen Smith and Jeff Brocher, is that how I say that, of Logarithm, will also be on a webcast as well. Webcasts are a great opportunity to learn about vendor solutions and how they work in a comfortable, relaxed setting where you can ask questions and find out exactly what they do, right? That's the goal of this show and the goal of our webcast. So going to be a lot of fun. Make sure you check it out. The other announcement is if you've been trying your hardest to get a ticket at DerbyCon, we got some. We know tickets sell out pretty much immediately. And we have an exciting announcement. We're giving away 7 tickets. I thought there was 10. What happened? You know what? I don't want to know. I don't know. We're giving away 7 tickets. So here's what you need to do. Subscribe to the Security Weekly YouTube channel and send an email to sam@securityweekly.com with either a written or video testimonial about what Security Weekly means to you. That's it. It's simple. First 7 people to complete this task will win a ticket to DerbyCon, and you'll be invited to participate in our Security Weekly DerbyCon interview series that Sam and Mark will be running at the conference. Oh, we needed 3 for ourselves so we can actually go. Gotcha.
We needed 3, the other 7 going to the audience.
There you go. So do that. All righty. Enterprise security news for this week. Gentlemen, where would you like to begin?
Anywhere. Thyonic is a good one.
Thycotic?
Thycotic. Sorry, mispronounced it. So went through, read this one. Of course, mispronouncing the name. I apologize, people. This is awesome because whenever we're testing, it's very, very common. I would say probably 1 out of 3 tests. We actually find stale service accounts in Active Directory. And the attack path is you can use the Kerber roasting technique developed by Tim Medine.
Yep.
And the owner of Red Siege. And the way it works is you can actually request the ticket associated with that particular service account, and there's a trick for actually reversing and pulling out the password hash.
Yeah, he did a tech segment on the show about that, John.
Awesome.
It was awesome. Yeah, it's great research.
And it's funny because even the employees, Red Siege does a lot of testing for Black Hills Information Security, and they're on our chat with all of our testers.
Yeah.
And it's funny because one of the testers that works for Tim is like, I work for the guy that developed the technique, and I still don't know how the hell the damn thing works.
I agree. But, yeah, it's not an easy technique to fully understand. Yeah, he spent and he admits, he's like, I spent a long time researching and getting this to work. It's not like you can read an article. I mean, some people might, but like I just can't like read an article or even hear Tim speak about it once and go, oh yeah, I can fully understand it. Like there's a lot to it.
No, there's so much to it. But the moral of the story boils down simply for enterprises. What they need to do is you need to remove those stale service accounts.
Yep.
And this is a great way to identify those service accounts and eradicate them.
And rotate, and I think where Thycotic's getting at, you need to rotate your service account credentials just like you do any other user account.
No.
No, that doesn't help you
I think that's what they bring to the table, right?
It is, yeah.
That's cool. But the reason why I caution to say you need to do that, because I don't want listeners of the show to say, let's start doing this manually. Let's make these service accounts expire once every 90 days. No, don't do that by hand.
Yeah, you need an automated system to do that. Agree. Yep.
Yeah, and to your point, John, we're going to see a proliferation of service accounts because of the way the new infrastructure works. And this is going to be a growing challenge. And we're going to see lots of different types of solutions do this. Thycotic's a password vaulting type of solution, looking at managing the service accounts. There's also some new technologies emerging that are also looking at managing, rotating, updating service accounts as well. So this will be a growing field because this is going to be a big challenge for enterprises.
Yeah, we've been looking into the vaulting technology. It's interesting how not that long ago, Amazon threw their hat in the ring, and they've got AWS Secrets Manager, right?
Yeah,
and then
I think that
I also found out yesterday that Kubernetes and Fargate also have a way to, and that's how many are managing their secrets, and what Matt started referring to as a DevOps environment as well. I think that's going to, I've already seen that trickle into infrastructure, and that's just going to put more like of a spotlight on making sure you're managing all of your credentials and secrets in a secure manner and rotating them, which are two different things. And it doesn't fully solve the problem either. It just makes it harder for attackers.
Well, and the complexity gets even worse whenever you take into account the hybrid of both cloud and on-prem accounts and service accounts that exist in both of them.
Yep.
So you're absolutely going to need some type of automated solution for this in the future.
Agreed. Awesome. Let's see. Agio is launching. Now, I read this and I was hoping for something different. I have spoken with the folks at Agio. They're great people. The founder is really sharp. His team is really sharp. They're basically announcing penetration testing and assessment services. What I was hoping for was more of a product testing type of service, which I know NSS Labs does some of that, right?
Yep.
I think both activities are absolutely critical. I think it's hard to know, certainly from your own perspective, running an enterprise. Have I configured everything securely? Have I done everything? Like, where are my gaps? Pen tests tell you about those things, certainly. And when you have a product, I think there's two tiers to it, right? There's a comparison of the products that are on the market today. And then what I'd also like to see is, hey, so I chose product A and I configured product A and I put some controls around it. And now I want to take that and I want to test just that component. Like, did I really configure product A appropriately? And there's functional testing and security testing that needs to happen, I think, in that scenario.
So two things about that, Paul, that I think are interesting. One, whenever you're talking about product assessments, I think far too many security professionals try to look at product security assessments like they have to write a 0-day for the product. And that's unnecessary.
Yeah,
you and I, we can sit down in 10 minutes, look at a product, run it through a debugger, and we can quickly identify this is garbage.
Yeah.
They're using get-s. We can see that that's actually being invoked. We can see that they're not using safe SEH properly. And I don't think you have to go all the way to the point of writing a 0-day for it. And more organizations need that capability, and that type of quick thumbs up, thumbs down that you just talked about would be awesome.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing, whenever you see anybody that's doing managed services that's entering into pen testing, that is an absolutely fantastic play for them. And mind you, I run a pen testing company, so I'm like, oh, great, another competitor.
Right.
But I understand from a business perspective why this is so important. If you are providing managed security services and you don't provide pen testing, your competitors are providing pen testing and they're providing managed services. So if you're not providing that service, it creates a wedge for a competitor to come in, offer something you don't, and then that gets their foot in the door to actually take your business away. And so this is just a good play for them.
As long as it's separate teams, I'm okay with that. And most MSSPs that I speak with, John, that offer those services, right? I mean, they're completely separate teams, different reporting structure, right? And that's fine.
Yep, absolutely.
What else we got? StackRox Kubernetes Security Platform is being offered on the Google Cloud Platform Marketplace.
Okay, so this is the announcement that they're on the marketplace, not that they support Google Cloud Compute. I misread that. I thought that
I think you're right. Yeah. I think I misread it too.
This is the Kubernetes stuff. So this is the shift that StackRox did about a year or so ago. They were all down the runtime side of the house, had some issues with their product, kind of rebooted themselves and said, oh, wait, let's go after the static compliance side of the fence and built some capabilities around Kubernetes. We all know Kubernetes is the de facto orchestrator in DevOps and requires security checks and configuration checks to make sure it's configured correctly. This is an offering that they've built. Fantastic. There's others out there. They're putting it up in GCP Marketplace. Okay. I mean, you got to be there, right? You're going to have to be in all the marketplaces if you want to survive in the cloud world these days. So, good announcement, but, it's a little boring to me. I mean, we see a lot of these announcements. It's kind of, okay, I finally got my product into the new marketplace. Yeah. Okay.
But I think it's important, though, right? I really do, especially with the marketplaces that are out there. The ability to go and purchase this quickly and easily and have it automatically deployed, and I'm going to talk more about this a little bit later, is essential. Almost any enterprise, if you can make it turnkey or make it close to that as possible, that's just a good play all the way around.
Well, I think some of the decisions I'm faced with are the same ones that enterprises are faced with when they're deploying infrastructure into the cloud, and that's how much control do I want? And how much security and controls do I want to give up, right? Because I was looking at Lightsail, for example. I'm like, why don't I hear more about that? I don't think you get, from what I read very briefly today, you don't get as much control, right? So then you can kind of back that down and you can do EC2, right? And you get a little more control. But then as you get into more of like the other cloud technologies, a lot of them are trade-offs as to like how much control you actually have or need. And what I think enterprises are going to be faced with as a challenge is, for this application, how much control do I need or want, right? How deep down the rabbit hole do I need to go? Do I trust Amazon for these applications, but in these other ones, I want more control over the infrastructure?
Okay, so let's talk about that for a couple of seconds, because I think that's important. We can now talk about, CJ, we can talk about the Amazon thing, right? We're good for the
Yes,
AWS?
Jordan got clearance.
We are clearant? Okay, cool.
We had some retractions. But
So we discovered a vulnerability. I've alluded to it on previous shows. We've been working responsible disclosure. So, this kind of ties into the cloud security thing. And Matt, this is really why I was pushing, like, hey, what does a complete comprehensive security package in the cloud actually look like? So in Amazon EMR, you have the ability to spin up automatically and have it all working together. Things like Spark, Hadoop, HBase, Hive, and a bunch of other frameworks together.
What is EMR, John? Sorry.
It's basically a stack. So
Okay.
if you think of like an elk stack, or you think of a lamp stack, it's basically a stack that is commonly used that has a bunch of applications that are all tied together. Okay. So that would be like Q, that would be Hadoop, Spark, Hive, Jupyter, Pig, and so on. So they have that package that a lot of their customers want, and they can automatically get that entire stack of applications. So whenever you get into a problem with security on this, you have a number of issues. First, the vulnerabilities that can exist in any one of these different applications that exist. That's just standard vulnerability management.
Yep.
The issue that we discovered associated with this, and I think this ties in a little bit later when we talk about some of the other cloud security vendors that are out there, is what we discovered is whenever an organization creates a stack, right, of these applications, you also have the ability for it to auto scale, which means Amazon will automatically spin up multiple instances of the application as the load demands it, and it will also go back down. So imagine an accordion. So the accordion goes up as you need, and it goes down to keep the costs down. So it automatically scales up and it scales down. So whenever you're talking about automatically relying on a vendor or somebody to manage that for you, you do have to be careful. For the core Amazon applications, they absolutely will. But in situations like this, where they'll give you a stack of applications, you may run into issues. And the issue that we ran into is if you are using EMR and it automatically starts scaling up, the default configurations from a security perspective will show up for something like Q. And it'll say, look, you have not logged in. You still have to log in and create a user ID, an admin level user ID. And then it allows you to actually go in and then deploy malware on that stack, and then you have access to the rest of the stack.
Oh, interesting. So they don't deploy them like fully configured. They deploy them with, I gotcha.
But that's not even, that's kind of a halfway correct statement. They deploy them fully configured to be functional, but the security settings,
I gotcha.
like the human interface, goes back to the default. So if we use the accordion analogy, the accordion scales up, but there's holes in the accordion, and then you can take advantage of those. So we'll be releasing that blog today or tomorrow. And this has been one of those things I've been touching around quite a bit on the show. Whenever you're talking about security and you're talking about configurations, the base configuration that you build can be secure, but as it stacks, the vulnerability is popping in. Right. And that's one of those things where you could do everything right, absolutely everything right, but it can completely blow out a hole underneath it. So you shouldn't always trust your cloud provider to provide that security for you, because there will be things that'll bite you.
Yeah. And we've seen, John, a lot of the breaches in the cloud are misconfiguration based, whether it's your core configuration or you expand it into a new service. There's so many different pieces that all come together that a slight misconfiguration in one of those services potentially opens up an attack vector across the entire stack. And that's why, Paul, you and I have talked about this multiple times on this show. I think, John, you in others, misconfiguration for some reason doesn't appear very sexy, but geez, oh man, that's how people are getting in these environments. The second thing, just quickly to wrap up this thing with StackRox, this is deployment of their platform. I'd rather see a SaaS-based offering that allows multi-cloud hook-ins to bring it back. This is great announcement if you're all GCP, but we know that not a lot of organizations are single cloud. And the reason I'm about this announcement is I'd rather see StackRox have a SaaS-based platform that allows deployment of their capabilities into multi-cloud, bring all that data back and centralize it. Because if I'm just taking all my code and plopping it into GCP, that's great if I'm GCP. But if I'm not, do I have to now deploy 3 of these? Well, then how do I aggregate all that data back and really understand the posture of Kubernetes across all my environments? That's why I want to see these deployment models a little differently in the cloud, is because you have to assume multi-cloud and on-premise are at play here.
Well, and that's why I think, like, when I look at that, I'm like, well, maybe I'll just push more into Amazon's cloud, use some of their tools, because the likelihood that their security tools they build in that will go across their own properties are pretty high, maybe. But that requires, like, research. Like, is their secrets manager, like, can a Lambda function use it along with ECS, along with Lightsail? Like, how many different properties have they integrated with everything? Certainly not. Everything doesn't support everything right out of the gate.
Yeah. Well, and the number of services that are coming up is just, like, earth-shattering. I mean, it seems like every week, all of these cloud service providers are creating a new service stack for all their customers. And I really, really have a concern of that complexity creep, kind of what you're talking about, Paul. Not just going across multiple cloud vendors, but I'm really, really concerned about even within Azure, even within AWS, as these new services are constantly being added in, are they actually being looked at with the level of scrutiny that's required to make sure that they're secure? And we know the team at Amazon, and they're solid. They're amazing. They're rock stars. But just like everybody in this industry right now, there's not enough warm bodies to throw at this issue to actually make things that are vetted properly.
The ObserveIT made an announcement, a crowdsourced insider threat analytics solution. Crowdsourcing is interesting when we talk about security. I think it makes a lot of us uncomfortable out of the gate to know that people are going to use our data, right? But if it's done anonymously, it can benefit everyone, which is the essence of crowdsourcing.
Well, ObserveIT, Paul, as you know, was one of those companies that I really was skeptical of. But as I've seen them more and more in our customer environments, and as we talked with them, I actually really like their platform. I really like the fact that they focus in on the insider threat, and they actually have reasonable, like, protections and alerts associated with the insider threat. So I absolutely give them the benefit of the doubt, because they've been doing such a good job.
And they're a sponsor, and their webcast with us was amazing. You know, they had their platform running, and people were asking questions, and like, yeah, you do that here, and here's how you do it, kind of thing. And it was spot on.
And that's how a webcast is supposed to go, right? Like, not, let me get back to you on that one. It's like, no, right here, this is what you're looking for.
Yep. Right.
And I would say that even if they weren't a sponsor, and if they were crap, I probably would say they were crap. And we that's just how we aren't afraid to name names. But this is cool. Whenever we're talking about insider threat protection, I think they're one of the absolute leaders in the space for sure.
So do you see value in will you get adoption of this crowdsourcing technique to improve the threat indicators in a platform like this, or will people be skeptical to put their stuff in there? I'm just curious.
The only way it's going to work is if people buy into the platform. I think the platform and that concept of crowdsourcing is fantastic. The idea is amazing. But if everybody, just like you said, is nervous about it and they don't put it into it, then it's just going to kind of wither on the vine.
With threat intelligence, ThreatConnect has released an enhanced integration with Flashpoint. Flashpoint seems to be the go-to company for threat intelligence, and like companies like RiskIQ and what's the other one that I can't think of? They all integrate now with Flashpoint.
Yeah, Digital Shadows.
Digital Shadows is the other one.
Yeah.
Well, John, what's the value when did you see customers probably running some of these solutions? Like, what's the value? Do you find them getting a lot of value out of,
zero? Never.
Zero?
Yeah, I'm sorry. So this is, I think Paul intentionally pulled me out on this because he knows my feelings.
Is this just a challenge with threat intelligence in general?
Well, it is.
So
let's talk about how threat intelligence is effective. Threat intelligence is incredibly effective if you can correlate it across multiple different parts of your IT infrastructure for security. Across your SIM, the edge of your gateway, you can pull all of those things together. I think that works, but I think a lot of companies are buying threat intelligence. They don't actually have the platform to actually disperse it and integrate it into their environment properly, number one. And number two, they're not feeding the proper telemetry, be it event logs or Sysmon or NetFlow, into the platform so it can pick up the proper alerts. And the other big problem that I have with threat intelligence consistently is the inconsistency of the feeds. So If you look at any threat intelligence feed and you look at their current bleeding hot, we have this threat intelligence. We know that this is being used for C2. We know it's being used for malware. It's going to take about a week or two for the other platforms to actually catch up and start utilizing it. So you have this massive gap. And some people will say, well, what you need to do is buy all of them. Well, that's garbage. And ultimately, the very nature of threat intelligence is looking in the rearview mirror of what an attacker did in the past. It is not telling you what the attacker is doing today. Now, some of these vendors are getting a lot better in actually detecting what attackers are using at the specific time frame, or their end difference in time between when they detect an alert and when they can actually feed that out to the customer is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. But really, it's glorified blacklist. And I know there's people that disagree with me. I mean, there's lots of money getting thrown into this. But in our tests, no. Threat intelligence feeds are not things that are popping up and saying, oh my God, they caught Black Hills Information Security. Now, if we emulate an attacker, if we go to the MITRE attack technique matrix and we emulate all those steps in MITRE, lights it up like a Christmas tree. Mm-hmm. But if you're actually using custom attacks and you're actually using bleeding edge attacks, like a real red team or an adversary is going to do, you're off that bubble.
Mm. I mean, largely, I agree, John. I think I also think it plays into your strategy for detecting the types of attackers that are coming at you. I think it can help automate and supplement those attacks that, like, yeah, we see that, yeah, we know how to block it, right? And can provide you maybe some more time to focus your defenses and detection on some of the more esoteric and customized attacks.
Yeah. And the other thing that bothers me is if we ever look at any of the rules that you get, whether it's like STIX or YAR rules or wherever these things are coming out of, and there's a number of different interchange formats, if you actually dig into the actual formats, a tremendous number of them are this domain, this IP address, and this file hash. And we're going back to those blacklists. And your firewall, your spam gateway, and your antivirus should be detecting that anyway. So it's interesting. It's interesting to say the least.
Yeah.
Let the hate mail commence.
I love it. We're doing a disservice if we don't trigger hate mail. So
yeah, true. Can we trigger some more? Greenbone introduces virtual appliances for vulnerability management. Welcome to 2019. God. This is 10 years old.
Where has this been?
Didn't Qualys came out of the gate with a virtual appliance? No.
Yeah, right around 2010 when I was there. We got a lot of pressure when I was at Qualys about the hardware-based appliances, and we built the virtual scanners. I mean, we were doing this in 2009, 2010. Greenbone waits until 2019 and creates a press release. They now support virtual appliances? Really?
This is great.
Holy cow. Get with the
in 2009 and 2010, that was bleeding edge. That was ahead of the curve at that time, I would venture to say.
Hey, dude, you don't want to be first. You don't want to be first. Everyone knows you don't want to be first. And in Greenbone's case, you don't want to be second or third
or last.
or pretty much dead last, right?
Pretty much dead last.
So now you guys thank God, you guys are going to get some hate mail, and it's not just going to be me.
Well, it's only from the German listeners because Greenbone's primarily over in the DACH countries and a few other places in Europe. But yes, our DACH listeners will definitely send me hate mail.
Yeah, there's lots of choices for vulnerability management, and I don't know that having a virtual appliance really is that much of a big deal anymore. It should be on your list, but it's an easy one to check, right?
Hey guys, I got a question for you two. I want to throw this out there. Is vulnerability management kind of a commodity now? It's not that one is exponentially better than the other. They're all kind of about the same. It's like
they're all basically the same. Yeah. Paper. I do these calls on a weekly basis because I've worked for two of the three. Everybody wants to know where's the differentiation. There's not much, John. I mean,
on the vulnerability management side, Matt, I'd argue there's not much. Now, they've all built on other features those are your differentiators, right?
Correct. Core VM is core VM. I don't care if you're running Tenable, Qualys, or Rapid7. They're all roughly the same.
They are.
There's a few little tweaks here and there. It's where the strategies have taken each of those companies and what are the other things they're doing. Qualys has expanded a lot into core adjacency functionality when it comes to file integrity monitoring, all their application security stuff and container security stuff. Rapid7's gone into not only incident response, but security orchestration and automation. And that's where each of the vendors get differentiated. But to me, at the core VM level, No, there's not much there anymore.
I love it when you guys talk vulnerability management. It makes me feel better about my threat intelligence team.
Well, I mean, even when you compare, like I did, you compare the coverage, like, I don't know, that's pretty much a moot point, because what I always come down to after I analyze that data was, if it's based on CVEs, it's kind of a bad measure, because all of the VM vendors have checks that maybe could find something that maybe is a CVE, but they're not referencing. It finds stuff that doesn't have a CVE number. So, I mean, as long as you have that core functionality in today's day and age, I think you're good. I think, as we've been saying on the show, it's more about configuration. And you should be looking at whoever's doing your vulnerability management, your patch management, what's their capability, or what other solution are you getting to manage your configuration? Because that's where much of the vulnerabilities are cropping up.
Right. And they're moving away from the device into the application.
Right.
And that's why I like what Qualys has done in their application side of the portfolio, is that's where the attack vector is moving, and you need capabilities there as we build these more complex container-based applications.
Well, I think that's a huge part, but I still think when we're looking at CVEs, for example, when you're also looking at post-exploitation, lateral movement, attack simulation, and that's where I think threat intelligence can be incredibly powerful, is if you can actually replay an attack in your environment, see how your telemetry and your security defenses react to that attack. That's very powerful.
Yeah, and they do that. So a lot of the platforms do that in breach simulation. Mm-hmm. I think AttackIQ and Veridin, which is now
but they're not. But AttackIQ is not doing like traditional Nessus style scanning. Are they?
No, they're not in the vuln. But like, they can take a threat feed. One of them, I think it's attack. One of them, I think it might be AttackIQ, right? Can take a threat feed and take the information about that attack and then turn that into a simulation, which I think that's pretty cool. Don't get me wrong.
That's badass, right? Like, if we're going to use threat intelligence, let's use it that way.
Let's use it that way. Yeah, I agree. Completely agree.
Go through and recreate these attacks. But right now, is there anybody out there in this space that's kind of working together with vulnerability management as it relates to missing patches, CVEs, misconfigurations, and then also, like, service accounts and taking advantage of group policy preference files, taking advantage and leveraging PowerShell for things like Bloodhound and lateral movement in the environment, because that's really where your vulnerability surface is post-exploitation. And I don't see that being tied together. And I could be wrong. It would be awesome if there was a vendor that could tie it.
I'm going to go on a limb and say, look, vulnerability management and patching management is a commodity, and I think it's something you should just be doing. And I really think you should do that whether or not there's a vulnerability or not. And I'll give you an example as to why. It was the Black Duck Synopsys Black Duck team that analyzed Apache struts and all of the vulnerabilities associated with every single version of struts. What they found was it was misreported in both directions. In other words, there were versions that were flagged as vulnerable to something that were not, and there were ones that weren't flagged as vulnerable but really were vulnerable. And they produced a report. You can go find it on the internet. And that made me think that as we look at, DevOps on the application side and applying that to IT infrastructure, that I just need to keep up pretty much regardless, right? Mm-hmm. And I need to get ahead of the curve, not take on that technical debt, not worry about, is this a low severity, medium severity, high severity, critical, just not critical. I want to fix it. I want to put the fix in. I want to test it. Well, if it's good, I'm going to push it out into my environment, right? And then when stuff happens or has happened that comes to light in the future, I'm like, hey, I'm good. I can focus now on doing the breach and attack simulation stuff we talked about. I can focus on configuration management. I think all that stuff has to become table stakes.
Well, and one of the things that you guys talked about, I know, Paul, you've been talking about it for the better part of a decade, and Matt, you've been talking about it too, is you're at the point where, honestly, you should be just automatically deploying those patches. And I know people cringe. They're like, oh my God, that's going to break something in production. If that breaks something in production, it is not necessarily the fault of the patch. It's probably the implementation, the service. And I think we need to be more aggressive to get rid of those lows, those informationals, those medium level findings, because those are, like you talk about, table stakes. That's our bread and butter for getting into organizations, are the ignored vulnerabilities that people don't think are a problem and they just ignore them for years.
Mm-hmm. Right. And look, it was all about the remote vulnerability. We've done a pretty good job with that. But look, as soon as you get on a box and you have root access, I can now leverage local vulnerabilities that you're not patching because you don't think they're critical to do lateral movement in the organization. You just need to clean that stuff up. It's table stakes.
Well, and that's why I love Brandon from Capsulate. He's like, look, if you get inside of a container and the kernel has vulnerabilities, many of them can be exploited from within the container. So now your local vulnerabilities are really remote based on how whatever remote vulnerabilities you might have in your applications that are running on top of containers or inside containers.
Especially if you're allowing the container to have root privileges, which is always why I said do not give up root in your containers.
A lot of them you don't even need to be root, is what Brandon said. That was the segment where we were like, wow, we're all kind of screwed. Thanks.
Oh, yeah. Thanks.
It was
Thanks
an awesome segment. It was awesome. VMware, so CloudKnox, Cloud Security Platform for VMware Cloud on AWS. I'm like really confused why, if I'm in AWS, I would run VMware Cloud and then put a security solution on top of that. That seems really strange to me.
Yeah, so this gets really interesting, right? So VMware made this announcement with AWS a few years ago that people could run VMware in AWS, which is great. If you want to get your VMware environment off-prem, put it in the cloud. Okay, great.
That's
sounds
still
good.
Weird. I know, John. I'm thinking the same thing. Like weird. Like I talked about light sail and I mean EC2 and
right.
I mean,
kind of weird. But VMware has this product called NSX that's providing a lot of security capabilities for VMware. So why do I need another security solution in my cloud if I'm running VMware, why am I just running NSX?
Yeah, or another I don't know if CloudKnox probably supports more than one cloud provider, I would imagine. That could be one reason.
Could be. Or you could go directly to EC2 instances and containerize your applications and not run VMware at all. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Which, I mean, doesn't solve the problem, but gets you on the right path. Anyway, if you've got secure, we talked with many about that. They're like, yeah, we're in the cloud now. We're in containers now, but you just took your vulnerable legacy applications and stuffed them in the cloud. Now, there are some advantages there, but it doesn't fix the actual problems, right?
Correct. But you're also getting a lot of native tools in something like AWS that can do a lot more than some of these other tools that are outside and do it for, I mean, fractions of the cost in some respects. I mean, why not use it?
I think one reason people don't use it is the learning curve right now.
That could be.
Jack mentioned someone that like did a Fargate deployment, and it was like 40 hours on the phone with like tech support to get it going. And a lot of this stuff in Amazon that's new, like Secrets Manager is pretty new, is one of my hesitations because figuring out how to get it to work is a challenge. And everyone knows, hosts, listeners, everyone knows when you're trying something new, security is the first thing to go out the window, right? Like, let's make it work and we'll go back and secure it later. Like, we just can't help that as human beings.
So the product that somebody needs to build is a really slick interface that manages all these new security offerings from AWS and makes it really easy to deploy and secure. That would be an awesome product.
It would be.
Kind of like a cloud passage, but not for individual systems, but for like just cloud service management across all the platforms. So it's basically you have one interface with a crack you can turn on, and it'll automatically federate it down to Azure, Google Cloud Compute, and AWS. There you go. Let's do it. Let's make it happen.
Let's do
it. There it is. That's a differentiated product.
God knows I need another company.
The Cloud Needy does some of the auditing on all those cloud platforms,
they do
but
the auditing
not the
across
management
the
of it. I mean, they can remediate, but what you're talking about is the actual setup and configuration management of it. Right?
It's the setup, configuration, and management. That's the hard part right now. And new ones are coming out all the time, Paul, as you said.
Yes.
And so how does somebody stay ahead of how do I deploy the latest secrets management or the latest this, that, or the other thing? If somebody built an interface that made it really easy to administer that and do it, that would be a really good solution for a lot of companies, I think.
There's not much else in here. BitSight announced Enterprise Analytics and Humio, which is a financial security.
They're the identity guys.
Yeah. The financial services management and looking for fraud and things like that is pretty cool.
It is.
But that's a longer conversation.
Yeah, I think it's like a dotted line to security, not necessarily directly. It's different than what we normally talk about.
It is. We actually interviewed some of the guys from Jumio. Their identity platform's pretty interesting because they do a bunch of identity verification as part of the process to make sure the user is who the user says they are, which is great from a fraud perspective. It's great from a security perspective. This is more fraud related versus security related, but they do both.
Well, I think we don't do a great job of differentiating between enterprise security and product security, that I'm offering a product. My customers are logging into that product like a bank where your customers are logging in. What am I doing to protect that product is a different strategy and different ballgame entirely from how do I protect my infrastructure from people attacking it directly, right? I think we probably need to differentiate those two on the show and do a little more with the product security aspects, because I think that's interesting. And fraud in that example is huge. I mean, there's a lot of resources you got to put in to protect your application and your users against fraud, which is a very different thing from protecting attackers from getting at your infrastructure.
Yep.
Cool. Well, that will conclude the enterprise security news for this week. Stay tuned for 2 upcoming segments with multiple interviews that we conducted at Black Hat 2019. Stay tuned.